Paul Graham from optimalbody.ca. Today I'm going to talk to you about what to do if you overeat and you're trying to lose weight. Over the last 14 years, coaching people on how to lose weight, I've seen it probably thousands of times where someone's doing great and they're losing weight and they're feeling good, and then all of a sudden something happens and they get off track, they overeat, and then it feels like the wheels fall off and they feel like they've ruined everything. So today I'm going to walk you through some simple strategies of what to do when you overeat. First, before I go through those strategies, it's important to understand overeating can be a serious challenge. If this is something that frequently happens, you want to figure out how to get to the root cause of your overeating, which often relates to emotional eating. I'll have a video pop up above my head that covers that topic. But on to what to do when you overeat. So you have this surplus of calories when you overeat and you feel like results are heading in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go through the steps you can take to help balance things out. So the first thing you need to do if you overeat is cut yourself a break. The biggest problem when someone overeats is usually their mental dialogue when they overeat. So most people feel guilt or shame when they overeat because they feel like they've ruined everything. It's really important to try to come at this from a different perspective. In my experience, what happens is that once people start feeling guilt and shame around overeating, it leads to more overeating to help manage those feelings. So it's a vicious cycle that keeps going. So the first thing, which takes practice, is to try to cut yourself a break and show up from a place of compassion. This helps to reduce how long you're overeating for and allows you to get back to the habits that were working to help you lose weight prior to that. Really important stemming off of this is you can't ruin everything from one meal or a bad day or a bad weekend or a bad week. If you've actually been developing new habits, you haven't ruined all that in a short period of time. This mental dialogue is what takes you off track. So try to change perspectives of, I had a misstep. That's normal. That's part of the process of losing weight. Out of all the years I've been coaching people, do you know how many clients I've had that don't get off track? Zero. I get off track with my nutrition multiple times throughout the year. Everybody I know does. This is normal. What really matters in terms of getting results is how you respond when you get off track. So that's the first big thing, is respond instead of guilt and shame and getting into that cycle with looking at, okay, I had a misstep, it's okay, what do I need to do now? The next big key, understand if the scale skips up to a much higher number after a bad meal, a bad day, a bad weekend, or a bad week, almost none of that is actually an increase in body fat. Most of it will have to do with retaining more water. Usually when someone is overindulging, they're consuming foods that are higher in salt, so that's going to cause you to gain more water. Oftentimes people have been reducing how much carbohydrates they're eating when they're losing weight. Even if they're on a higher carbohydrate diet, it's usually less than before they were losing weight. So when you eat more carbohydrates, for every gram of carbohydrates your body stores, it needs 4 grams of water. So your weight will increase just from that alone. And finally, most people, like I said earlier, get into that feeling lots of guilt or shame or like they've ruined everything. When your body starts going through hormonally its stress response, which will do when you're having those feelings, that can also cause you to retain more water. So don't freak out when the number goes up on the scale. Next, we're going to get a little more hands-on in terms of, well, what do you do? So it's important when you're using these strategies to do them from a place of positivity, not a place from guilt and shame. Often when people get off track, they'll make and use some of these strategies because they feel like they've done something bad and wrong and they need to try to right that wrong. It's really important you're doing it from a positive standpoint of cutting yourself a break and not feeling guilt and shame around getting off track, because it will result in 2 very different outcomes. So the first thing I suggest you do, if you've had a meal, for example, where it's a Saturday night and you overeat, on Sunday morning when you wake up, wait to eat until you're really good and hungry. So I mean stomach grumbling hungry. Don't get overly hungry where you're feeling weak, you're feeling shaky, things like that where you're getting negative symptoms, but try to get really good and hungry with your stomach grumbling. This is a strategy we've used with clients because it's pretty easy to regulate. What most will find is they don't get hungry for several hours into their day. Once you get really good and hungry, have a nutritious meal, get satisfied again, and then get right back to the habits you were doing before you got off track. Usually, for most people, if it's one meal or one day where they've gotten off track, within a day or two, this will be enough to get everything back to where you were previously. Let's say you want to do more in addition to that. You can also increase your activity slightly in the week or weeks after you've overeaten. Really important to be careful. When you increase activity, your body will respond hormonally by usually making you more hungry. So you want to make sure you have a good way of controlling how much food is coming into your body and make sure you stay pretty tight with that while you're increasing activity. Let's say you try these strategies for a week and you find you're still not back to where you were prior to overeating. The next thing you can do is, just for a few days, focus around eating more protein, fruits, and vegetables, and eating a little bit less carbs, a little bit less fat. Again, just for a few days. This will help to decrease how much food you have coming in, which will help to put you into that higher energy deficit and help to get a little bit of that traction back. Again, most people don't need to do this. What would work much better is the first strategy. If they do that for a week and get right back to their habits, everything will be good to go. Can't stress that enough. The most important thing is to get back to your normal habits, exactly what you were doing before that was working for you, and really try not to stress. That's more important than anything else. Then the other thing you want to do is hit the pause button for a second mentally. Just slow down and ask yourself, is there anything I need to change about what I was doing with my diet to help make sure I'm not overeating? And what I mean by this is often people's strategies they're using to try to lose weight are making them feel deprived because they're getting too strict too quickly, or they're reducing calories too low too quickly, which is causing problems with a lot of hormones, making them overly hungry. So are there any things you need to change about the strategies you were using before that maybe were triggering you to overeat? So don't discount that idea either. And finally, probably the most important thing, which I mentioned earlier, but I'll mention it again, identify what the trigger was or what the root cause is behind the challenges with overeating. If this is just something that happens from time to time because you were at a friend's wedding or you had an anniversary, then it's probably related to the celebration there. However, if you find you're getting into that habit just on regular weekends or just all of a sudden after a hard day at work, then that's probably going to relate to a bigger trigger, oftentimes an emotional trigger around eating. Again, we have a separate video you can click on for help with that. So there you go. You have several different strategies to help you when you overeat. They're pretty hands-on and pretty practical. I can't stress enough though, try to avoid beating yourself up, feeling guilt, feeling shame, and instead come from a positive direction.